Alright, we are back with whatever it is this is. I don't know if you call it content or not, but we're out walking the dogs. The Alchemy uh, Horizons, whatever, set came out for Baldur's Gate on Arena. Um, um, you know, it's a little disappointing. If you play Pauper, and if you play on MTGO or if you play in paper like I do, most of the prominent commons that we're going to make a splash in regular Pauper, um, paper, MTGO, they're uncommon on Arena. So that's kind of a letdown. On the same note, there's a few things that you get that you don't really see in paper. Because this is Arena, so that's fine. Take it or leave it. It is the appeal of playing on Arena is that it's a different format, right? I think I probably said in videos before, kind of my piece. I love paper Pauper. Not really fond of, where MTGO is at. So I made the move to Arena because there's a variety of Pauper formats that you can just get into on your own. Whether or not they're supported by Wizards or not, you can find a lot of variety there. So this is where kind of some of the divide starts happening between what's online, what's in paper. So it's a good thing, it's a bad thing, kind of depending on where you're coming from. But I did want to take a look at some of the cards that came out that are still interesting if you are going to play on Arena, and things that you'll want to try and pick up for a variety of things. I try not to do it as of what's top tier, what's bottom tier. I'm not super on the pulse of that, and even if I was, I'm not going to try and dictate to anybody else what is a quote unquote meta defining card, because I really always want to encourage people to play the things that I like, things that they like, and really explore it and have a good time. So let's drop all the pretense. Let's get to some of the cards. This first one, Betrayer's Humiliation. Pretty solid card. I mean, it's an upgrade of a red card. I'm not really familiar with the names. The kill effect really isn't the important thing. If you're playing something swarmy, sure, you kill something off. But Perpetual is something you'll see online. So you do this to a card, and it's always going to have this thing where you remove its loses its abilities is pretty important, because you have some decks that will try to loop through effects, enter the battlefield effects, Muldrifter, strong effects like that, and of course Skyfisher. So you start looping through these effects, constantly getting these advantage, because I think Pauper in most any format, whether it's Arena, MTGO, paper, it's really become a value matters format. Into the battlefield draws a card, into the battlefield does effect, and repeating those strong effects are very strong. So being able to rip that off of a card and cut that piece out of somebody's loop is pretty important. So it's something to keep an eye on. I don't know exactly if it's a staple or really essential, but I think it's definitely a card to keep your eye on and look for. Steadfast Unicorn, 1/2, not much to write home about for 1 mana, but its ability that it gives your whole team vigilance, and it's a little bit cheaper than there's another card. I can't remember the name of it, but it does the same thing. So it's a little bit cheaper. You can only use it on your turn, and but giving your whole team vigilance is actually pretty important, just because you can still keep your guys up on defense. When you have kind of a stalemate, you'll see that mid-range grindy decks, especially in green, are pretty prominent in MP or in Arena rather. So if you need something to kind of break up that stalemate, buff your guys up, and then be able to defend is pretty nice. Flaming Fist Dust Guard. We see a lot of these 3/1s for 2 in white, but this one giving your next creature that you play +1/0. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, nothing spectacular, um, but it's interesting, right? Mesa Disruption. So this one's kind of interesting. I think where you'll see this one really take off is, obviously cards that require a lot of things. So I don't know, maybe there's like an Orzhov, Rats deck, where you can give them a little toughness and then, start getting out of control, or, 7 Dwarves. I kind of like this in Rats, though, is kind of what I was thinking on this one. Just because I think, that's obviously Rats being just 1 toughness are pretty terrible on that end because they just die to anything that removes it. But you can make 1 really big rat, and perpetually get it, bigger, keep it around and do something. Maybe that does something. 7 Dwarves, maybe 2. Obviously, there's only 7 of them, but we'll get into some cards that might increase the ability to do those 7 Dwarves decks in just a second. So this one's kind of interesting to keep an eye on, again, because of that perpetual, something that you don't find in MTGO or that you find in paper. It's unique to Arena, kind of interesting, fun to mess around with. Valiant Farewell, I really like this card. It's not like, I don't think it's a staple per se, but it will be good in decks that you can sacrifice. White isn't super big on sacrifice, but the mana constraints are not as drastic as they once were in Pauper. So you can splash around in 2, 3 color decks. So if you're pairing this up with black, maybe green, I really like it in maybe green-white version of Bayou Groff, where you play out your creature that you don't care about sacrificing, and you put that on the sacrifice creature, attack with it, pump it up, and then play your Groff out to get an even bigger Groff, right? So now you've got a 7/4 Groff and get a card back, or certainly in black, where you're have more sacrifice effects and things like that. Even red has a few sacrifice options. So I think there are definitely options with this. Anytime you see draw a card tacked onto something and you're getting +4/0 out of this potentially, yeah, sure. I think it's worth something picking up. We've seen this type of card before, however, it is important because Flaming Fist Officer, can't remember the set that has it, but the previous one is a 1/1 for 2 mana in white. Same thing when the card leaves the battlefield, so obviously you're looking at things like Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, the lands from New Caperna, Sacrifice and Search. So you can get this thing pretty big, pretty quick. It is a little bit more expensive, but noticing that its effect does it when it leaves the battlefield versus on death is certainly an upside for just a kind of a vanilla ground beater. You're gonna have to find stats on it somewhere, or not stats, but abilities on it somewhere else. But it can grow and get big. Blessed Hippogriff, it's all right. I think the creature itself is kind of lackluster. 2, 3 for 4 isn't terrific. I don't think so in this format. Most of the stuff that's in the air, it's not really going to compete with anything in the air. For 4 mana, you get stuff a lot cheaper. I mean, I think when you look at kind of the pinnacle cheap flyer, the 4 mana Core Skyfisher being a 2, 3 for 2 and getting you value, I don't know that there's necessary a place. Even Combat Professor, I'd say I'd probably take over this as far as a creature. There's a lot of other stuff I think that you can get for 4 mana on the creature. Getting Indestructible, it's okay. It's a nice little cantrip. I don't know if If decks move a little bit more mid-range, if you're splashing this in a deck with like green where you want to have some built-in protection and give your ground beaters some evasion for the late game, if you're playing something like that, that's something to consider. I think green-white is potentially a really strong deck with a lot of value creatures that draw cards when they enter the play. And then, being able to protect something and then make it go to the air a little bit later, that could be pretty dangerous. And I'm not necessarily, I don't know how viable it would be within the format, but it'll be something I'm interested in checking out. So I definitely would, maybe get one or two just to mess around with. Let's see. Oh, Icewind Stalwart, little bit more expensive than you want for white. However, bouncing something and bringing it back into play is pretty important in a value format that ETB triggers are going to get you a lot. You're attacking with a Mole Drifter, evasively, chip him for 2, blop this guy down, draw 2 more cards, reset your flyer, and you're off to the races. I think it's, again, a little bit on the expensive side for the effect, but anytime you see this kind of card, I think it's important to have a couple, just to kind of hedge your bets on what kind of enter the battlefield effects are going to be around. And things that you're going to want to replay for value. Also worth a note, I mean, if you're playing against certain decks, it is a nice way to get off the enchantment removal, quote unquote. Things like pacifism effects or whatever. Negative enchantments that hit your creatures or cards. That's always a nice way to trick that off as well, gain a little value on it. And then, oh darn it, I just removed a card. It was the Naga. Where was it? Let's get this one back. Oops, come on. Oh man, this is so hard to deal with sometimes. Who do we have just to look at? Yeah, this guy. Oops, he's over there now. So let's take a look at this one. Guardian Naga. Okay, so is it terrific? No. 5/6 for 6. I mean, sure. I don't know that this is really what your end game is. I do like that it exiles artifacts and enchantments if you need that kind of removal. So again, decent. If you're looking for kind of synergy plays, green-white, you play Winding Way, and it's a creature, so you'll draw it, so you do have some artifact removal. So you're looking at more of like a green-white ramp, more of a, I guess, a toolbox style deck where you've got main deck answers. You can sideboard it out, you can sideboard it in. It gives you something to remove a problematic artifact or enchantment, and then still have a big threat for later. You attack with this thing, and it's pretty resilient. It's not going to die to anything on combat. It's going to chip away at whatever they have on the other side. It's going to be back to block. So again, decent, not terrific, but worth picking up maybe one or so. Moving on, let's see. So that's white. Let's take a look at blue. This one's just kind of a personal project of mine. So I'm looking at decks that particularly reduce people's power, and then attacking, so basically in the Simic, and that's probably why I'm doing this. But so in a green-blue, you've got green has a lot of creatures that can't be blocked by creatures with 2 power or less. And so I want to try and eventually get a deck out there. If I actually make it, we'll build it, we'll play it, but reduce their power and basically keep them unblockable. So again, quirky, cute, but you do get a pretty good amount of value on this. I mean, because it's instant speed, you can not only temporarily reduce something as a combat trick, but permanently reduce something. Again, perpetual is a thing. online. Permanently reducing something by 2, I think it opens up a lot of options for things. If somebody's just sitting there with something they thought was a decent stat stick and now is just a 1-3 or a 0-3, it's a lot less threatening. Certainly you'd rather remove it than not, and this is more cutesy than anything else for just a kind of a personal project of mine, but I think it's decent enough to collect on the way. Card draw, we don't really have Tron, of course, in Arena, but if you've got a big enough mana grow and can ramp yourself up to this amount, getting 2 cards is going to be something that people are going to have to contend with. Maybe 1 or 2. Definitely hand advantage is the name of the game. So it's a lot, but there may be a turn or 2 where you're just not doing anything. You draw a land and the board state doesn't change. You might as well draw 2 cards at the end of their turn. Oops, I skipped one, but this one goes again to the minus power side. However, I do like this one a lot. The 1 toughness, it's a liability. Like let's not get it twisted here. In Arena, you've got Suffocating Fumes. That's going to keep X1s in check. Any creature with a 1 toughness is at risk, and you could get blown out really quickly with stuff like that. Red has a few things that does the same thing, so you got to be very careful when you're playing with 1 toughness creatures. That being said, again, perpetually, you're basically making it unblockable if they have 2 power or less, because nobody wants to really get in the way of it. Their creature's just going to be neutered. They might stand in the way and just throw a chump blocker and let their stats get reduced, and that's cool too. But keeping things going down, it's again interesting in my own mind for the silly decks that I like to make. Not a game changer, but it's fun. I think it's a fun card. I think people get a kick out of it. I skipped one which I do actually like quite a bit, is Undersimplify, and I think this one's kind of a funny card just because of the way it's worded. It's not as simple as you might think, but basically when you're you're going to counter a spell, it's a weaker mana leak obviously, but whether you can end up countering the spell or not, if it's a creature, it's going to get -2/0, which again perpetually is important. Obviously you want to remove it if possible, but making that creature weaker, less viable if it were ever to come back, I think is important. You got some recursion if you don't have great ways to deal with the graveyard. I don't know that it's really on the top list. I mean, I think Lofty Denial is still, I think, probably your best bet, especially since blue is pretty flyer heavy as it is. And there's another one from the new Caperna set that I forget the name of it just because it's so new, but it has the casualty that effectively gives it the ability to make an opponent spend 4 on it as well. Leave No Trace, or no, that's not it. I'll come back to it later. You'll see it in the deck and I'll talk about it, but I'm just kind of getting over COVID and still have a lot of brain fog, so forgive me. And then last blue card, a Young Blue Dragon. It's a dragon, and it's it's got an adventure. So again, stat wise, 5 for a 3/3 isn't great. Scrying, as a sorcery, meh. Again, not terrific, but again, it's got some utility. So I think it's something that you maybe pick 1 or 2 of up, but I don't know that it's a format staple. But being a dragon, maybe it helps in some sort of dragon theme that comes along. I don't know. It's always good to pick things up that are fun and interesting. This one I'm actually pretty excited about, Guildsworn Prowler. This is really good. Lets you be a little aggressive. It's a rogue, which helps for party theme decks. Death Touch, it can work as removal on block. I mean, granted, you may not get the card draw, right? But I mean, people don't play death creatures normally for card draw. It's a way to attack at people. They don't want to get in the way of it. You can ninjutsu something out with it. If they kill it off, you get a card back. You've really lost nothing. So I think this is a really solid card, even with its 1 toughness being a liability for sweepers, because when they do it is typically going to be when you're not blocking anyway, so at least you get your card out of it. Yeah, I really like this card. This one's pretty solid. I think you'll see it pop up quite a bit. So yeah, I'm kind of excited to see that one. Gray Slad, not great. 4-1, at its best, 4-1 Menace and Death Touch. It's kind of weird. But, mills 4 cards, creature base, graveyard base decks are out there. You always have to be careful because there is graveyard removal, but, it's definitely something to help fuel your graveyard and self-mill and still be a creature. Nefarious Imp, decent. 2-1 for 3. I mean, we see that stat line, but usually that's draw a card territory when you're talking about Overseer, and I would take that over this any day. But permanents, again, leaving the battlefield, so multicolor decks with like Evolving Wilds or things that you're sacrificing on your own allows you some pretty good selection options. So if you're playing a deck that needs some selection, this could be pretty decent. 1 toughness liability. I don't know if it gets there, but it's worth considering. Sewer Plague, this I really like. If it was 1 mana cheaper, it'd be amazing, and I'd say it might be one of the best removal cards in the set. As it is, it's still really solid because Perpetual is really good. Obviously, it's not as good at its base as something like Obnex's Cruelty, because that's a -5/5 if you really need to get rid of a big creature. But the upside is you're getting more of those types of effects that effectively exile or take it out of play. So you don't have to really worry too much about kind of these redundancies of effects of cards coming back, creatures coming back. Yeah, they may get their ETB effect, and that may be getting them some value, but I think that it's going to eventually kill off pretty much anything and then make sure it's always pretty much garbage from there on out. Is pretty solid. Although I would like to see this being used in a tricky way to after getting hit by it, to get that ETB value, but not getting a creature on the backside of it really breaks up a lot of the combo things that you can do. I mean, I think you still have, obviously, the Skyfisher and Omen of the Dead can still work, since they do work at instant speed. But Omen works at instant speed, but I don't know. It's really solid. I like this removal. I wish it was a little cheaper. Maybe it gets downgraded, because alchemy cards can change, but I like that one a lot. It's fun. Churn Devil, I don't know that we've seen this effect on Arena yet, but I think what's kind of cool about this is it's specifically non-token, so you can kind of get away with some sneaky things in having token creatures in play, and making sure that you get rid of their actual solid creature, and not a lot of times they target I'll just use off a little fungus token or insect token or whatever, and your sacrifice card isn't as relevant, but making them get rid of an actual creature when maybe you're doing something like keeping your big you're making sure that you don't lose your big fractal token or something else on the other side. So there's some options on this. Again, it's a little bit of expensive. I don't know it's necessarily something that you're going to want to really build around, but it's kind of cheeky and interesting to mess around with. And then Summon Undead, I like. It's a little bit, again, it's a little bit more expensive than you really want to see, because at this point at 5 mana, you're not necessarily getting that much of value out of your creature that you're reanimating. The fact that it mills is kind of nice. So you can mill 3, that it helps facilitate. I mean, I don't know that it's definitely not going to replace. I don't think the white reanimator spells yet, just because 4 mana is cheaper than 5 mana. That's kind of, until that changes, you're going to play kind of the cheapest effect, unless you have something that's really stand out, for the effect that you get out of it. This one isn't there. The mill is nice because it helps you dig a little bit and maybe, search into something that comes back to your graveyard, opens it up to black, maybe play Esper. Who knows what kind of options you want to run, but I think it's worth getting a couple just to mess around with and try, but I don't think it's super crucial. This is kind of something that's new, because you're looking at spellbook cards, and I like this one a lot. Line Up the Shot. This is a decent utility card, right? So at its worth, it's instant speed, cantrip, and green. Okay, cool. I mean, for something like a Kiln Fiend deck that is, looking to turn through its decks and wants maybe a little protection against artifacts, enchantments, and flyers, not bad. I mean, it's something you can run main deck and sideboard out. It's again not going to set the world on fire, but having that extra utility, I think this is one of the first couple of common decks, common cards that has Spellbook. There is another one in here, but that one might be a little controversial. I don't know how the Historic Pauper community is going to take that one. We'll get to that in a second, but I like that one. It's good utility, decent. Circle in Druid, again, another specific deck to graveyards, enabling mill, but I like it that doesn't really do anything when it enters the battlefield, or mills you when you come to the 4, but when you kill it, then you get your land back. I like this in like Golgari Gain and Drain, because getting those New Capenna lands is kind of how you facilitate a lot of your life gain and drain. So I like this one. Digging 4 cards deep is pretty solid. Always beware the graveyard. Hate Poison Blade. Again, not anything new. We've seen Death Touch, instant speed, draw a card, but having it in green is good, so I think it's worth noting. Let's see, what's the next one? Oh, Scale Nurture. There's dragons now. Not a super big thing. That it is a dragon itself is nice. If you run 4 copies, it's got 2 toughness, 2 mana for it, though. I don't know that the life gain is really worth it, but it is another mana enabler. If you're new to the format and you need guys to enable your mana, the better toughness they have, and I think is a little bit more relevant. Little life gain never hurts. Again, I don't know that it's anything super special, but it's fun. Next one, Arcane Archery. Again, you're getting some value with these boons. 3/3, reach and trample until the end of the turn, and then reach plus one counter with reach and trample. So that's pretty good. It's expensive, however, if you're looking at like a Gruul deck in particular, where you've got an Archomancer that reduces the cost of it, 3/3 reach and trample, gives you offense, it gives you defense against things that green can be traditionally weak on, and or at least the value creatures that green can be weak on. It's got plenty of reach things, but those aren't typically the ones you're running. And then giving another creature, a little bit of a boost with that reach, that can be kind of cool, and allow you to stay aggressive. Druid Ritual, again, I like this. It's divination in green, but because it's got some ability to recur, I think it's a little bit better. Specific to land and creature, but come on, you're playing green. What are you going to be running besides lands and creatures? And maybe a couple of these. Not super great, but if you're looking for something and you're new, I think it's a good card to pick up. This is probably the more controversial of the spellbook cards, because as you can see, it lets you get an uncommon. It does actually ramp mana because it brings the land into play, and I just don't know what the Historic Pauper community is going to do about this. Because you are getting an uncommon. So are you really playing a common, or are you playing this for an uncommon? Because the ability, getting Jaden's Tomb to seek a non-land card, that could be pretty strong. I don't know if it's game breaking, but it kind of sets the precedent of what's too strong, what's not too strong. Then you start getting into kind of objectivity. I don't know if it stays legal. Honestly, I don't know how when they do the Historic Pauper event, which I guess they'll do at the end of this month, so we'll find out if Wizards even allows that card to be run anyway. Let's see, what else do we got? Underseller Myconic, again, another mana producer, competes for Elvish Visionary, or not Elvish Visionary, Land War Visionary, yep, which is, I think, probably your best in slot at 3 when you're looking at mana, because it gives you a card. But 1/2 is not bad. Getting 2 more bodies on it is actually relevant depending on the deck you're playing, and that it's any color is pretty good. So as far as a mana producer that gives you more than just green, I think this is pretty solid. So I think it's worth looking at. And then the next one, gosh, I can't, there we go. Next one, yeah, Ambitious Dragonborn. It's a dragon, and it can be good. I think, maybe late game, just going to get a vanilla beater out of it. But if you're running like big dudes, and you've got a big dude in play, or a big dude in the graveyard, this is big, so, again, not the best card, I think, in the world. When you're just looking at base stats in green, you can do generally a little bit better at 4 mana and up for just stats, but in the right deck, maybe it works. And then this one, again, I just like this because it's not being able to be blocked by 3 or more, which that is relevant, because if you're looking at kind of green decks in Historic Pauper, you will see Trumpeting Herd, and they're going to put out 3/3s, and a lot of them. So this being able to evade those, I think, is relevant. It is expensive. The trick isn't like much of a trick. I mean, if you're holding open 4 mana in green, they see this once, and then you never, you're never going to not know they have it. But getting hexproof and permanent 2/2 on something decent at 4 mana, it is, again, very expensive. Super signaled, but I think one of my pet decks in Simic, being able to evade creatures by their power, nice, and that it completely evades Trumpeting Herd, which is one of the format staples at this time, I think is pretty relevant. In red, Kobold Warcaller, we've seen this effect where a red creature gives other creature haste, but this one perpetually giving them haste in your hand, that's a little new, and it's actually really good. I like it. You've got the Goblin that comes into play, attacks, and does the same thing, but that this is repeatable and only 1 mana, pretty sweet. So I like this. I don't know necessarily where it's going to be abused, but maybe there'll be something that you can really do some fun stuff with. Honestly, I think maybe in Gruul, if you get this out early enough, and you're putting mana producers out that can immediately tap for more mana and then refill your hand, that might be kind of interesting. Speaking of mana, Reckless Barbarian, I like this guy. It's just a vanilla 2/2. You can reduce its cost, obviously, with Archomancer and green-red. Great stuff to spend 1 red and get 2 red out of it, and a sacrifice effect. I think this will find a place in some decks for sacrifice and being speed driven. And then this card, I think this might be my favorite card. Now, I am pretty partial to playing green-red, and this is what I was speaking of making the Seven Dwarves deck, you can make more than 7 dwarves, right? So you have one in your hand, you buff it up with this, you get another copy in your hand, and you keep going with making them bigger and bigger and bigger. So that could be kind of interesting in playing a 7 dwarves with this. I really like this card a lot. However, I like this in Gruul. I like this in pretty much anything red where you're looking at creatures that give you value. In particular, things like Krushok, cards that you want more copies of, that can do kind of give you like some of that versatility, so I can get a copy of a Krushok, discard it to buff something, and then still get the scavenge off of it later, just because it's creating that physical card for you. So, give yourself another owlbear. This is, I think this might, to me, just in my personal, I don't like to say best cards, but I think I'm just going to say this one's my favorite, just because I like creatures that do things. I like green and red, and I think this is going to have a lot of fun interactions where you can create other copies. Obviously you have to be playing a deck where you want to attack, but hey, play this in a Boros deck and, attack with your evasive Overseer that already drew your card and give yourself another Overseer. It's a pretty interesting card. I like it a lot. I don't know if it's super strong, but it is one of my favorites. Another one is this bad boy right here. Find some prisoners. Oh, I like this because in draft I think this was really great. I really enjoyed this in draft because a lot of times I would get to steal their big bomb. You get to play it at instant speed. So playing it at the end of your turn, letting your mana untap, then playing something big on their turn is really nice. Or hey, just depriving them of a land and you getting a land. Really solid. I like this card a lot. This also another one of my favorite cards that came out. So I definitely recommend this. Also, some nice artifact. I wish it was Exile artifact. Gosh, if it was Exile artifact, that would be terrific, because then you'd have another new answer to bridges in MTGO. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Arena. And then last in the red, again, another dragon. 4 mana for 3/2 that can't block. Not great. It's a flyer, but it creates a treasure token. Adventures. I always like cards like this. Get you a little extra value. I think it's probably a little bit better than the blue one. I don't know. They're both. There's really no great dragons, but I like it. And then moving on to colorless, Poke of the Bat. Not great. It's haste and flying, so you get some evasion, get some speed. If you want this in something, maybe it's helpful, but kind of not much to say about this one. This one I do kind of like the Lantern of Revealing. It's not terrific because if you don't get the land in play, you're only getting a scry out of it. You're not actually drawing the card, which is kind of a bummer. But it is kind of interesting, as a mana rock, just because you do have a chance in a land-based deck to really ramp up your deck. If you're doing that at the end of the turn and you're filtering out lands and ramping yourself, when you get towards the end of the game, you're getting rid of stuff that's going to be irrelevant at the very worst, and giving yourself, a better card to play with the following turn in those board stalemates. And it, gives you, some good fixing. I don't know if it's any better than the current mana rocks that are out there, but it is, I think, worth looking at, noting, and potentially including. So these are the cards I picked up. There's also, a pretty good amount of reprints if you missed other sets that they were in. So I think it's a set worth, drafting to try and fill out stuff for your collections. Definitely cards in here worth getting. Whether or not you're going to like them all, if it's not to your personal taste, it won't offend me. If you want to leave comments and tell me what you think, I'd be more than happy to hear it. But these were, again, mostly the cards that I just like. I think, it's a good idea to maybe pick some up. Maybe play a Pauper Brawl deck, at least get one copy. And hopefully you enjoyed this, and I'll catch you again soon.